Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by thelines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined as always by the great Justin Perri. You can follow him on X at Justin Perri. 8 Shot Quality Bets and Hoops HQ is where you can find his work. We're going to discuss the Saturday college basketball card, a little bit of Sunday mixed in, and the ASUN tournament, the first conference tournament this college basketball season, which tips off on Sunday. Justin, before we dive in, how we doing? How are the Cats?
Cats are great. Everything's going well. It's been a good week. I had a good weekend. So, having a good time. And then, have had a strong Wednesday, Thursday. Didn't really have a good start to the week, but up as a whole. So can't really complain. Another strong one. And hopefully start this weekend off right with a good few selections here on Saturday. These Fridays get to us so fast, Eli. It just happens again and again and again. Now it's already February 28th, recording, of course, for the 1st of March. So only 3 weeks till we have a bracket, and these games are starting. It's kind of crazy.
No doubt. So let's dive right in. Number 12, Texas A&M at number 3, Florida. KenPom has this line, Florida -10, but we have seen some early openers. Florida -8.5, juiced at some sports books. Gators coming off of the upset loss at Georgia, and the Aggies have lost 3 in a row to your liking against Mississippi State, Tennessee, Vandy. You cashed that on Tuesday or Wednesday's show. Shout out to you for that pick. I'll be on the Aggies here, but before we get the train started and before we have the YouTubers complaining, why haven't you given out a pick in 5 minutes? We're talking handicapping strategy. Everybody relax. If you want to skip forward, you're more than welcome to in this game breakdown. But Justin, I have a bone to pick with you. Because when I look at the resumes on shot quality of St. John's and Texas A&M, they're arguably pretty similar. Yet you seem to have a gripe with A&M long-term. You have faded the Aggies over the last 3 games. So may I ask you what your prognosis here is with maybe the market catching up to Texas A&M with where shot quality is at?
Yeah, Texas A&M was above St. John's a couple weeks ago in KenPom, right? And I think they were just flying a little bit too high. They had strung together 5 straight wins from the end of January: Oklahoma, South Carolina, Missouri, Georgia, and Arkansas. All right, we had the expected loss to Missouri by almost 20 points on the road. They were lucky to get that. And you beat a team like Missouri that has also massively climbed in the rankings in the last couple months. And everyone starts being like, maybe Texas A&M, all this. I mean, they subsist a little bit too much, like St. John's, on beating you on the things that shot quality doesn't really evaluate. We don't have rebound quality. We don't have turnover quality. It's hard to really understand that, and it's tough. But look, I was on Butler on that game and cashed that as well, and that was an expected shot quality loss for St. John's. They do those types of things, the 49 other things besides maybe shoot the rock inexplicably well to beat you. And Texas A&M subsists on that too. They can cut and they kick your ass at the rim, pardon my language, and the shot selection looks good and the rebounding looks great. But again, outside of those 2 losses to Kentucky and Alabama, and I guess Texas as well, they were absolutely flying. And there were just a couple losses in there. Shot quality expects them to have 6 more losses on the year. So even those losses that came home recently were all expected to be losses, and they were just a net of losses, including Ohio State, Creighton, Wake Forest, Purdue, and then Oklahoma, Mississippi, Missouri. So it's 7 games and a net of 6. So actually that 7 is an overestimation because a couple of them were close, like Creighton, Oklahoma. But Missouri easily expected to be a loss. Mississippi easily expected to be a loss. Ohio State easily expected to be a loss. And I would imagine St. John's has those same types of things as well. And I'll pull up the data here because, look, they are very similar profiles and how I'm interested to see how they're going to do in the tournament because I think the defense for St. John's might be a little bit more legitimate, but they do have the same number of unexpected wins. So 7. But the thing is that St. John's does have one loss that was expected to be a win. So the net is technically a little lower. Nonetheless, which was Georgia, for anyone wondering. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, I think there's plenty of reason to go against St. John's when you look at the schedule upcoming here in terms of the spread, and definitely that Marquette game on the road to end the season. If they clinch at home and they have that number one seed going into the tournament, I can see Marquette absolutely proving a point.
Revenge game,
yeah, for sure. Especially if maybe Kadari and RJ Lewis surprise sit because everything's all clinched up and they don't care and they're probably going to go try to win the Big East tournament. But that Marquette, they are going to do so well that they're going to render that Marquette game meaningless, which is really great for them. But yeah, I don't know. I think Marquette is definitely, and I like the who does a really good job with the visualization of all this is Bart Torvik. So shout out to him and what he has going over there with his rankings. And he has Texas A&M 25th, which is pretty different than 21st for Ken Palm, and he did have them higher up, but still, this has been a little bit of a downswing, and we've seen these downswings for them. So I think it's probably about time you probably consider this a local low. The Mississippi State game, the Vanderbilt game, probably lows. And I would expect them to, be in a decent spot to turn around here. What'd you say the number was opening at?
Around 8.5. So to that point, if you look short-term, long-term, I have those A&M Final Four futures, which I actually bought a little bit more of after the Vanderbilt loss because FanDuel bumped it up.
That's a good buy point. I mean, yeah, it's not going to get much. You're not going to get a better price if you're already in.
Yeah, right. And you're probably going to be a 3 or 4 seed regardless, unless they win out here down the stretch or lose out. Then they'll miss by a couple seeds or maybe gain a couple seeds, just depending on how this last week or so shakes out for the Aggies. But over the last month for Texas A&M, this is where we talk about 3-point variance, how it swings. Both teams, when I'm speaking to St. John's and the Aggies, both inconsistent from deep. But A&M, over the last month, a negative 8.5% net 3-point clip. So both ends of the floor taken into account there. That's third worst in the country, with the Aggies and the exception of Mississippi State and Illinois. We'll talk about Michigan, Illinois in a little bit. So my point is, A, buy low point. B, they're going to regress to the mean eventually. I'm not talking about to the Division I mean, but to their own mean, to around 31%. And Chaz Lanier is not going to hit every single wide open three like we saw last Saturday when Tennessee went to College Station and won that game. So I think we're both coming to a mean here with the inclination that the Aggies will bounce back eventually in regards to their market rating. And you go back to last year, just comparatively speaking as well, Alabama's Final Four run, they were shooting 38% from three through early February. So early college basketball season through about a little over half the midway point. Then they struggled. Then they got hot in March outside of the Grand Canyon game. So there are ebbs and flows in college basketball 3-point variance, even for a team that is as high variance as they come in Alabama. And while Texas A&M is not a good, not an above average 3-point shooting team, but if they shoot back to the mean, to their own mean, then I think the Aggies,
Tennessee especially, yeah.
Right. There is an opportunity for there to be valuable bets to make on this A&M team. So looking at this matchup in particular, Justin, outside of the 3-point shooting, the Aggies ball pressure matches up really well against Florida, because what does Florida want to do? Run dribble handoffs, run dribble drive action with Walter Clayton Jr. especially. A&M also elite on the glass at both ends of the floor, not just on the offensive glass. And Florida, 10th ranked offensive rebounding percentage across college basketball. So if A&M can dictate the tempo, if this is a stylistic game where the Gators are dominating the offensive glass and dominating in transition, and Florida bounces back off the Georgia loss, you're probably looking at a double-digit loss, and maybe the market isn't low enough on the Aggies despite a 3-game losing streak. But if the 3-point shooting comes around with Walter with Wade Taylor III, and it doesn't for Walter Clayton. And the Aggies' interior defense comes to play like the numbers show. I think they cover this line and keep this one close enough where maybe they win it outright.
I mean, I don't know about outright. I understand taking the points. My problem is, and I agree that you will get a model like KenPom to probably give A&M a little bit too much of a discredit. The problem is that the market might know that. And so it is at this point a little bit tuned. The Ken's at what, 10? Market's at 8.5. That's about enough of a shift, in my opinion, to really change things. What's really interesting here for Florida, they've only won 2 games all season where their opponents shot better than 35% from 3. And that one game, one of them was Virginia, who we know, probably can't do anything else. And the other one was their first game of the year against South Florida, which was, they probably just blitzed them inside in a very different type of, they were undefeated, until that Kentucky game, where Kentucky shot 48%. And then Missouri shot 38%. And they did have a loss against Tennessee where Tennessee shot cold. That game was disgusting on both ends. But Georgia shot 56% from deep to beat this team. And shot quality had this as a massive, massive Florida win. So I'm a little concerned about that. I think it will take Texas A&M hitting some shots. But the problem is like, where are they going to do that from? They are not exactly a 3-point shooting team. They have won most of their games where they shoot above 40%. I would love if I could place bets on a team to win and them to shoot over 35%, because that would be a great bet against this on Texas A&M. I think it's highly correlated.
And then if they don't,
if they hit,
you get a refund.
Oh, maybe. But again, or just really good odds. Like, I would take plus money on something like that, where it's like, okay, if they don't hit their shots and they win, I don't win, fine. But I think they're going to have to hit some shots. It's Florida, and maybe they do. Maybe they do. I don't. There's plenty of reason to think they could have a plus shooting game. They have done well. This is on a road game. They aren't actually that bad shooting on the road. They had maybe one bad road shooting performance against that was at home against Oklahoma. Again, the road shooting has been fine. The Kentucky game wasn't great, but I don't think you have all that much to worry about. I think you can probably assume this will be pretty close to the line, and it'll come down to who makes a couple big shots. But that means I don't really want it. I don't really see myself beating the minus 110 on this game, which is maybe a little surprising for people to hear. But again, we rate this a little bit differently in terms of how we see the SEC. Florida, 4th for KenPom, and Texas A&M 21st now, maybe getting 25th, 30th type rating in the market. We have Texas A&M down there around that 45th point, and Florida around 9. So we're a little lower on Florida too, and now the gap is definitely shortened on Texas A&M over these 3 losses. So unless we get to like 10, I don't think I'm even considering taking A&M. But if A&M. But if it gets to like 7, I'll probably look at Florida. So
caveat. Going back to my original point with the A&M bet, I agree. I do think this number will climb up. I think it will close closer to KenPom. I don't think if this line closes 7 and I don't have action on A&M before then, I definitely won't at 7. And the handle will be largely in favor of Florida, probably more than
I need to retract. I don't think I need to retract. My mental math was wrong. I don't think I'm touching A&M at 10. It would need to be more. But I definitely lean Florida. I think that's still very fair. You don't just flip all of a sudden.
Sure.
But it's definitely a less of a impotence to play Texas A&M now that essentially I've been correct for their last 3 games. So it's just less of an advantaged guess now.
My only thing with Florida's defense, especially from behind the arc, like you said, A&M is going to need to hit shots. Variance shows over the last month that they're due for it. Not a good 3-point shooting team, but they could shoot 30%, 31, 32% from 3 and cover this number. Florida per shot quality, allowing a 29% three-point shooting clip, should be closer to 34. In conference, allowing 31% from three, should be closer to 34. So the numbers align for A&M to regress in this game.
It's going to be right there. Like this is just probably one of these games where at this point in the year, I wouldn't be shocked if you go out and you grab yourself a same game parlay of plus 12 and minus 6 and just play it to be between 2 and 4 possessions. I think there's a very good chance it lands there.
Yeah. Fascinating game. That's why I wanted to spend the most time on it among any, because
I'm gonna see what I can get on that right now if we got openers. So I'll see if they give me. I don't think they're putting alts out yet, but maybe FanDuel.
Yeah, potentially FanDuel Friday afternoon, Friday night, depending on when you're watching this. But let's keep it rolling here. Later Saturday afternoon, so before Florida, Texas A&M, Cincinnati at number 4 Houston. KenPom makes this line Houston minus 16. I'll probably have a bet on the Bearcats here. I think this line is a little bit too large. You go back to the last couple games for Houston. They've taken advantage of big-time injuries for Iowa State. Last Saturday, Gilbert and Curtis Jones both out. Texas Tech on Monday. McMillan, Darian Williams out for the Red Raiders. Since February 5th, Cincinnati has the 13th best adjusted offensive efficiency per Bartorvik analytics site that you mentioned earlier. Jizzle James, who, by the way, is Edgerrin James' son, the former Colts and Cardinals running back, averaging over almost... Yes.
How did I not know that?
I know. Crazy, right? It shows how old we are. That was like during our youngin' days watching NFL. But James averaging just under 20 points per game during that span. Cincinnati has a lot to play for on the way outside of the tournament bubble. Maybe not of the tournament, but on the bubble. Next 4 out, I would assume at this point. And since the beginning of February, Houston may be due for a little bit of three-point shooting variance in a negative sense, as their three-point efficiency is just under 43%. So if Cincinnati gets killed on the glass, my bet may be dead, just like the Aggies bet, because of how good Houston is on the offensive glass, just like Florida. But I'll likely be backing the Bearcats at a 5-possession point spread.
Well, that's a tough one for me. Both these teams rated pretty well, in my opinion. KenPom is at 16. Houston can do that to this Cincinnati team. They can do that to anyone. It's another really good spread for me. Boring, maybe. But I believe a stay off is almost as good as a no bet. I mean, we definitely don't like Houston, clearly, between the two of us. And again, I think, the slow tempo, both these sides are going to move slowly, inflates the value of that number. Problem is Houston can just hit every single shot. And yeah, I mean, Cincinnati relies on doing things that aren't going to work against Houston, which is defending the rim and attacking the rim and forcing and not turning the ball over. Like, good luck. I would argue Cincinnati is trying to be like Houston, and it's like running into your big brother. And everything that you want to be able to do, they are perfectly sized, twice as large, to be able to put their hand in the center of your face and just hold you back by 10 feet. I do also think that
the comparison, Cincinnati is like Starry and Houston is like Sprite. It's never going to be Sprite. It can try, but it's never going to be the best lemon lime soda.
Yeah, you're right. Starry is never going to be Sprite. Rest in peace to Mountain Dew. Sierra Mist, not Mountain Dew, for messing up my sodas, which is surprising for me. But no, I think Cincinnati, right? They might eventually get there. It's tough. It's tough to build your brand to attract the prospects to compete because there isn't enough talent for everyone to be Houston. And Houston's Houston, so good luck. But yeah, I do think this is a spot where late game antics could lead to this spread getting backdoored very, very easily. Houston does play full 40 for sure, and that's kind of their MO, but I just think in terms of the way who's out on the floor at the end of the game, if it gets to 20 points, I think I'd like Houston first half if I want to play Houston, expecting them to play, with the ferocity to end the game by the 25th minute, and then who knows how it goes between 16 and 21 or 12 and 21 even, and 16 and a half is probably a pretty fair number.
This line opening on FanDuel, Houston minus 15 and a half, minus 102. So right there with KenPom. We'll see how the market fluctuates later today on Friday, February 28th into March 1st, as you mentioned earlier. March beginning, the best time of the year by a mile. And another game that we're going to discuss, shifting over to another conference, the Big East, a bet that you will likely be making, Justin. Creighton at Xavier. KenPom sitting at Xavier minus 1 on FanDuel. I believe it's right there. Xavier minus 1.5, minus 110 both ways, minus 122 on the money line if you want to pay a bit more vig. Similar to Cincinnati, except another Cincinnati team, and Xavier much closer to the right side of the bubble. Next 4 in, next 4 out, or right there on the cut line regardless. How are you betting this one?
I am all in on X, baby. Let's go. I think this is an absolute mismanagement of the data. Yeah, this should probably be minus 4.5 in my opinion at home. I understand Ryan Kalkbrenner is a very good defensive player. I think Creighton has talent themselves for sure, but rating these teams 20 spots away from one another, I'm not totally sure about that. It's really hard to win on the road in the Big East, and yes, I know they beat Villanova by 2, which is probably very similar in terms of how KenPom's seeing this. Villanova was rated 55th at the time. Xavier is rated 54th right now. They beat Connecticut on the road by 5. They beat Butler on the road by 4. Again, it's just at some point you have to look at that and say, how sustainable is it? They started the season off. They lost to Georgia and Marquette on the road. They lost to San Diego State and Texas A&M on neutral floors. I wasn't, they played kind of a weak non-conference in my opinion. We know Notre Dame isn't all that great. Not the weakest, but not exactly crazy in terms of like those opener games. I'm low on San Diego State and Texas A&M, so I'm not super impressed by that. And I'm low on Georgetown this season. So it's interesting, but I do think Xavier has a good pathway here to go in and win this game. I really like these small numbers at home at this point in the season. I just don't see a lot of results finishing at that line. So money line, minus 1, Xavier, probably going to be one of my favorite plays for Saturday. Wouldn't be shocked if it's written up somewhere.
Ooh, little tease there. I'm with you. If you're betting this game, it's X or nothing, considering the spot. My only concern is Zach Fremantle is a huge liability in ball screen coverage, and that's where, just like the first matchup, Kalkbrenner had 29. They can eat you alive in pick and roll action. So stylistically, if Creighton is controlling the tempo, dominating the glass, favors the Blue Jays, especially in the half court offensively. But I may end up still, with that being said, having to play on X. So the market in line with KenPom, but we're both still seeing a little bit of value towards the Musketeers. Maybe less so for you about the spot. I think that's pretty important with everything on the line here for Xavier. And this maybe being a win and in game, and they wouldn't have to rely on any Big East tournament results. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is one of those games where, either side absolutely fortifying the resume. I would argue that this is one of the biggest games of the season for 2 bubble teams in the Big East. This is must-watch television if you're a Big East fan. I don't have any gear from either of these teams yet, so that means I can't officially root for either. And, it doesn't really matter.
Well, you can't be a St. John's fan and have gear for either.
Well, I collect gear from every team I go see, and I'm trying to collect gear for every single team. So I will eventually have to succumb to that rule. And I do have a Seton Hall Pirates shirt from when I saw St. John's there. So that's a pretty cool one. It's fine. Look, it's not even competition, man. We're going to win the league by 2 whole games. It wasn't even close. St. John's does not lose at Madison Square Garden. It is awesome. And I hope My only hope is that I honestly, I kind of have like a hope that they're not super all in on the Eastern Conference Championship. That they're pretty happy with the regular season title. They're sort of focused on March Madness.
Yeah.
I think you build culture a little bit more these days with March Madness than you do than it was maybe in decades past, where it was like, oh, we've won all these Big East championships. It's like, okay, you do it for a few seasons, sure, but you go make a run right now to the Elite Eight. That will help your recruiting tomorrow. I mean, yes, it's great. It's a big deal, but like, I don't know. I feel like the big steps to be made for St. John's and the future of the program are 3 weeks away, not a week and a half away.
Back to the SEC. Two more Saturday games, both in this conference, before we shoot one Sunday game along with the ASUN tournament futures odds. Georgia at Texas. KenPom makes this line Texas -3. No odds available per FanDuel Sportsbook just yet for this game. But assuming this spread opens around Longhorns laying a full possession-ish, maybe juice 2.5 or 2.5 -110 both ways. How are you looking about this one?
Horns up, baby. Horns up. That's what we're doing. We are betting on Texas again. I really like when I win a bet by the hook. And I'll tell you why. It's my favorite way to win a bet.
You got a ton of closing line value on that game.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've been making a distinct point to get ahead of my originating and give out my plays a lot earlier, because this is the time of the year where you need to. And I probably cost myself a couple bucks not doing it the whole season. But, I like also being able to flex, beating, commanding, mark, all that good stuff. But I love winning a bet by the hook because, especially on an opening hook, like the 5.5 was for Texas against Arkansas there, because KenPom's number isn't really going to get impacted. That's going to go down as KenPom very happy with how that, and I'm not talking about the person. Ken and I have chatted a couple times in our lives. I'm talking about the model as though it's a sentient being. KP, the model, isn't really going to move its needle because it essentially nailed it, right? Both teams went exactly as predicted, which means that they are the strengths they were supposed to be. They might shift a little bit by relative strengths, by their resumes shifting if someone has a massive win, but you're not getting too much of that at this point unless it's a huge result. But nonetheless, I think the important thing there is that the needle's not going to move on Texas. So if you had an edge on Texas, there's really not much of a reason why you should be sitting there saying, okay, I'm not betting Texas again. Maybe the market will be a little bit sharper, and maybe it will open up a point on Texas, like towards so that you lose a little bit of value. You can't get that full value on the KenPom opener, maybe. But yeah, I'd play it early. I'd expect the value to come in again. I'd expect the market to understand that they have a little bit of value, mostly because they are good at the rim and they haven't had a lot of success. And I think the SEC is going to give them some chances. So we'll see. Late season's always a little interesting. And motivation, all that, not really factored in. But if you like that stuff, I do think Texas has plenty.
Yeah, a couple things going against Georgia here. You mentioned it with Georgia and Florida earlier. Are the Bulldogs going to shoot 56% again from three, even though they're fully healthy at this point with Tyron Lawrence back in the rotation after missing a handful of games? And then you look at their isolation defense, which is how Trey Johnson scores and then some. 39 points against Arkansas really won you the bet, kept them within the number, even though they were up in overtime by a few points or so. 39 points in that one. If you can't guard in isolation, that is a death sentence against one of the best scorers as a freshman in college basketball. So probably no bet for me, but I'm with you. This one is Texas or pass, just based off of the notion that is Georgia going to be able to carry over that three-point shooting on the road now after getting right back on the bubble with that win over number 3 Florida? And are you going to be able to stop Trey Johnson? Probably not.
He's looking great. What a player. I'm so excited. It's best time of the year. I mean, and we literally have a conference tournament to talk about.
Yeah, but before we do, two more games. One more in the SEC.
Okay.
Arkansas, South Carolina. Arkansas -2 on KenPom. I don't believe this line is out yet. Yeah, no line out on FanDuel, but I would assume it's going to be right around that number. Maybe Arkansas -1.5. Aduthiero, who missed the Texas game, expected to miss another game now on the road with a knee injury. Avicic dealt with back spasms in that overtime win over the Longhorns. Keep in mind, Arkansas marginally covered the closing number, and they shot 52% from three in that game and rallied, I guess, in a sense, in overtime because of what Trey Johnson was doing. Conversely, South Carolina coming off of the 30-point loss at Missouri after upsetting Texas last weekend. South Carolina, much more of a better team at home this season, including the 15-point win over Texas, 4-point loss to Ole Miss, 4-point loss to A&M, overtime loss to Mississippi State by 5, 1-point loss to Florida, and 3-point loss to Auburn. Shot quality, Justin, be damned for me on this bet because I'm assuming it'll side with Arkansas, I think. But next up for Arkansas here, Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, 2 tournament teams. So to me, this is a sleepy spot, look-ahead spot, as much as there is one in college basketball late in the season than ever. And Arkansas ranks 34th in post-up efficiency allowed. That's where South Carolina gets its money offensively with Colin Murray-Boyle, one of the more efficient post-up players in this conference, 81st percentile to be exact in post-up efficiency per synergy. I'll be on South Carolina maybe as a plus money dog on the money line, or I'll take the point or two. But either way, give me the Gamecocks at home.
I'm with you. Shot quality with you. Down, a peg or two on Arkansas, up a peg or two on South Carolina. So a decent value here to grab them. I think you're exactly correct in terms of how this one might go down. The defense for Arkansas has been overperforming all season. The defense for South Carolina has been underperforming all season. Let's roll, man. I feel like we don't get too many agreements, but this is a good one. That one, and we got a couple today, so that's good. I'm feeling good. Xavier, so line up your Xavier South Carolina parlays and let's rock.
I would be shocked if that money line parlay gets home, honestly.
I like
it. One more to get to before the ASUN tournament. Sunday, unranked Illinois at number 15, Michigan. KenPom has this one, Michigan -2. Obviously, no line out yet as we're recording here on Friday. Wolverines 9-3 in their last 12 games. Haven't won a single one of those games by more than 4 points. Their losses, couple them by double figures. Dylan Harper falls asleep defensively, allows Namari Burnett to hit the game-winning walk-off 3 in the final seconds on Thursday night. You also have the win a week and a half or so ago against Ohio State where Bruce Thornton misses a bunny in the lane to send that game to overtime. But conversely, Illinois, since the beginning of February, I hinted at this earlier when I was comparing numbers between A&M and Mississippi State and the Illini. Illinois is the worst net three-point percentage combined over the last month. Negative 16.4% in terms of their three-point shooting versus the opposition. They're due for three-point variance. I think Yakachonis and Avicic can have their way against Michigan's drop coverage and this lock box run. But I will say, the one thing that makes me hesitant to fade Michigan here, we saw it in 2022 with Providence. They had a 9-1 stretch where they were plus 28 with their point differential. If you recall, Justin, they were winning one possession game after one possession game. So I wonder, is Michigan just playing to its talent level? And yes, they're getting lucky, but maybe it is somewhat sustainable. So I'm curious to see where this number opens before I pull the trigger on Illinois.
Yeah, Michigan, man. I think they're a little bit of a false flag operation for luck and what luck looks like in college basketball. And people will routinely say, oh, you're winning close games, you must be lucky. Well, what if you're shooting badly to end up in a close game and your median performance is higher? Like, that's what Michigan's doing. A 17-point negative differential in a 9-3 stretch is a plus 23 differential shot quality. That's 40 points. Good math, Justin. Good math. 40 points difference in terms of what shot quality is seeing and the actual in 12 games. So very, very easy to understand that a 3-point extra oomph from shot quality, that's a bettable edge. That is a bettable edge. So, I mean, if the market moves against Michigan, you might see me take them.
It will.
What's the number?
Well, we have no number just from the market, but I guarantee you this one could close pick. I would not be shocked. Would that
Sunday.
mean a play on Michigan?
If it's Michigan pick'em, oh man, that's interesting. At home against Illinois, who is definitely good, but I don't know about. It's like, yeah, if it's pick'em plus, if it gets to plus 1.5, I'm there. Like yeah, 2 is a bet for sure. I mean, it won't get there. But yeah, I do think this is about as much of a bet on this type of game as you're going to get from me at this point in the season. Like I rarely bet a Power 5 game at the end of the season. It's just nearly impossible. You're flipping the coin, in my opinion, and I wouldn't be doing that. I really have to have an edge on them, which is why in the last week and a half of the season, my card is 90% mid majors and low majors.
We don't talk about this enough. We have, though, in pockets of our Beat the Closing Number shows for college basketball purposes. But is this a game that you bet live and just wait?
Yeah. I mean, any game I bet live if the data looks right. I would either team getting out of this. Yeah. If it's some cold shooting, I would expect it to come back into the realm of reality. Honestly.
Okay. So maybe a play on Michigan for Justin pregame. Maybe a play opposite of that on Illinois for me, but I expect this one to be in the pick'em range where maybe both of us are staying on the sideline and waiting to bet this one live. I'm still not sold on Michigan, but the Providence thought looms in my head and lurks in my head a little bit. To your point, outside of the Rutgers game, this team has been up 2 or so possessions in a multitude of these one possession wins. So how much is the one possession win?
10-point shot quality win against Rutgers, by the way.
Interesting. Despite trailing for much of that game. Yeah, I mean, actually, I say that, but you watch it, and Rutgers was shooting out of their minds.
I mean, you ever watched Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper play basketball? They are insanely good, and they can do insanely talented things. And, you probably want to knock it down a peg, maybe call it 7.5, just give them a little bit of that extra credit of being just that much better that they can go out and get those buckets. That shot quality might not love to give them credit for above expectation because they just are that nice. And Harper and Bailey, honestly, Bailey's game has improved in the last 3 weeks. So, you can use shot quality as a foundational tool that I consider like a Rosetta Stone. I don't really think. Well, look, because it doesn't. You don't have to think it's like accepted. You don't have to say that it's the truth. But
but is Rosetta Stone unaccepted in the language learning space?
No. But what it really did, it wasn't because what it is like no one language on the stone is right. That's the point.
That's true.
It's that you now get to triangulate between them to understand the one that might be missing here perfectly, which is reality and predicting, because you get what's actually happening, what's expected to happen, and then what's going to happen in the future. And trying to just connect that linearly without having that third point, I think even if you don't think shot quality is 100% right 100% of the time, it acts consistently and almost speaks and interprets the game a different way so consistently that you can read between the lines to understand relationships, even if you don't think SQ's perfect at determining them, because it determines them the same way every time. So there's something to be said to have this system there that does that, even if hypothetically it's a 95% accurate system.
Last but not least, because it is our first college basketball conference tournament of the season, tipping things off on Sunday with the ASUN Lipscomb minus 155 favorite, pretty much consensus. So odds on favorite to win this conference tournament. North Alabama right behind them, co-regular season conference champions at plus 240, as high as plus 270 I'm seeing in the market. You look at stylistically, and I want to get your thoughts on this here in a second, Justin, but Lipscomb plays at a slower pace, and they want to win the three-point variance battle. 52nd in three-point efficiency nationally, right around 36.5%. They force you to play in isolation defensively. 5th lowest assist rate allowed across college basketball. That's pretty damn spectacular for a mid-major, especially in the ASUN. But where they do struggle is post-up efficiency. And I know game over game, three-point variance is going to swing more than post-up action because threes are greater than twos naturally. But I will say, if there's a long shot that I would take in this conference tournament, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to pull the trigger at 10-1, but it would be Florida Gulf Coast. They have a very, very hyper-efficient, I wrote this up in my betting guide over at thelines.com, very efficient low post offense with Keyshawn Kellman averaging just below 14 points per game. They've won 4 in a row, so they're hot going into the tournament, conference tournament. That being said, at the right time, and they line up on the other side of the bracket. So tough first round game against Queens, but you wouldn't have to face Lipscomb until the conference championship game. And keep in mind, once the semifinals start, the conference tournament gets reseeded. And as we discussed before recording the podcast, Justin, all home games. So this is going to be very fun because you get that home environment in the conference tournament. But all that said, long story short, I wouldn't play Lipscomb at minus 155, 60%-ish implied probability. To me, it's Florida Gulf Coast at a big number, small bet, or nothing.
I agree with one point and I disagree with the other. I also think Florida Gulf Coast is the proper flyer for this conference. We have them rated 3rd, essentially right neck and neck with North Alabama. So consider you're getting something with similar strength in terms of the shots they develop, strong rim and 3 rate. Not the strongest in the conference because you got bombers like Queens and North Florida, but a good offense with a solid defense, at least for this conference. And there's 2 good defenses in Lipscomb and North Alabama. There's 3 second-tier defenses in Florida, Gulf Coast, Eastern Kentucky, and North Florida. And in offenses, there's 1 top-tier offense in Lipscomb and 2 second-tier offenses in North Alabama and Florida, Gulf Coast. So if you put that together, you hear Lipscomb's 1-1, North Alabama's 2-1, Florida, Gulf Coast is 2-2. I like the Florida Gulf Coast price, but I also think the Lipscomb price is worth it. That's what I disagree with you on. I do think that they probably are doing this. They smushed almost everyone at home in the conference. They lost to Eastern Kentucky at home. They lost to Queens of Charlotte at home. The Queens of Charlotte game was an expected loss. Eastern Kentucky was an expected win. So maybe Queens of Charlotte has some juice to them, but you know they're going to be sporadic. I don't see them stringing together multiple wins, and it's hard. It's hard with their style. They rely a lot on that 3-point shot. They take a lot of rim and threes. Good style for sure, but like the problem is the shot making is weak. In terms of their bad free throw shooters, the shot making rank is bad on shot quality. So, if defense is played well, you're asking weaker shooters to take tougher shots. They usually subsist on like the good passing leading to good spacing, leading to open looks for their less than decent shooters. So, but they play volume and they play the volume game. They know if few will go down. If they get hot, they can probably win. So maybe Queens a little. Again, if they get that first round upset, it's whoever's coming out of that one. So no, but I do think Lipscomb probably is worth a minus 150. They are that team. again, a couple losses in season. You're going to have a couple bad games that were close losses. So you got to give them credit. They're going to hold first. They're going to hold home court the entire way through. The Eastern Kentucky one, they just shot terribly. Expected to have 13 more points. And then that's really the only blemish on their home record all season. So, yeah, I trust them. I think they're pretty good, and they're cold on offense too for the season's per shot quality. So, only expected to be scoring more points.
The interesting thing, one last tidbit on this conference tournament in terms of the market pricing. Queens isn't listed at some sports books because they're not eligible for the NCAA tournament. I tend to agree with you. Whoever wins the Queens Florida Gulf Coast game, and I don't want to discredit North Alabama, but just based off of price, I think that's worth a flyer. Maybe you throw a tenth of a unit down on both if you could find a book, and there are some books like Fanatics that list Queens in the 20, 30 to 1 range. So that's probably worth a look if you want to throw a little bit less on Florida Gulf Coast. If you want to throw a bet on this tournament at all, I probably won't, even though I like Florida Gulf Coast. If I am going to place a bet, I don't necessarily see enough there to do it. I can't wait for the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. Frankly, that is where I spray and spray and spray on those futures, man. It's my favorite conference tournament in a mile. Can't wait to talk about it with you next week. But anything to wrap up the ASUN tournament discussion, or anything that we discussed or coming up for you this weekend, college basketball wise?
Nothing on the tournament. Feel pretty confident that it should be Lipscomb. I'm sure that'll be my Jerome entry with the first form due, I think, on Sunday. So that's fun. If you don't know about the Jerome, it's a free contest just to stack up your skills against other college basketball sickos. I think Trilly Donovan doing it this year, helping run it. And yeah, enjoy that. I think this is, we're in the best time of the year. I will say, try to not play games where there's nothing mattering anymore. Some seasons are over. Don't bet those games. I just don't. I wouldn't even bet them if I had them, without the rake. And you have to take it with that, vigorish added in. So, the Coastal, a couple other conferences, the seedings look good. There's a lot of really sharp tools out there that show you the probabilities and where teams can land. Look at that. Find the ones that are locked in or eliminated, and don't touch them. Just don't touch them. I don't even think teams care to really move seeds too much. It's really about staying alive. I would really only bet on games where, and even try and bet on teams that are playing to survive and are playing for really important things, whether that be like major conference seeding, like maybe, or pride or big battles, or I don't know. But yeah, try to be picky. Get picky. Really, really get picky right now, because it gets easy again when you get to March Madness and the conference tournaments. But the last week of regular season, you can lose 10 units if you're not smart, and then you got to win it back. So I'd rather pass and stay ready for a part of the season I know is a bit more beatable, because you're back in conference tournaments where everyone cares to win again. So always align yourself with the team's incentives.
Well, that is the tricky part about conference tournament handicapping is there the incentive for every team? Because like you said, when you were talking Big East, St. John's, maybe the motivation isn't as high. And
Power Fives, right? Power Fives can be interesting for sure, but those I feel like I bet less anyway because they're so well modeled by that point. Like I'm mostly on like an Arch Madness or WAC or something crazy, or Big South or Sun Belt. Like that's where you want to sink your teeth into, because guess what? The people who aren't watching this podcast into the 49th minute, they're probably betting the big conference games, and you can slip through the cracks in the low majors and mid majors.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, I'm with Justin. You don't need to bet every single game. Remember not to chase. Even if you do have a rough Saturday, you lose a few bets, so what? Move on. Don't let that carry into, and you end up losing. I don't know. I don't even want to go there because
I went 5-15 Monday, Tuesday, Eli, and it's like I didn't make an extra bet. I didn't make an extra bet on Tuesday night to try to figure it out. I had my Wednesday bets in before Tuesday started. So I was already set. And I think, I've gone like something like a 24-14 since. So it's like you get it back. You trust it. You just cut your teeth. You sink them in. And you trust that the volume is there tomorrow. That's the best thing about these sports with so many games, is that there's no reason to chase. It's not like there's no more NFL until Sunday of next week. You wait 16 hours, there's 50 more games. So be smart. Take games you think you can win. Take bets you would make again and again, regardless of result.
For Justin and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, thanks as always for watching and listening to this edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. Remember to head over to play.thelines.com to participate in our free contest where you could win Amazon gift cards aplenty. You could also check out our best bets from our staff and myself included over at TheLines.com in our Discord channel. The link is over at TheLines.com, unsurprisingly, in the top right-hand corner. So for Justin and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, so long, everybody, and good luck with your college basketball picks.